Hi, my name is Rolf Agner, and welcome to On Air with SICK, where we discuss insights from industry experts on autonomous mobile robots, or AMRs, in the material handling industry. Today on our show, I'm joined by John Black, Senior Vice President of New Product Development at Brain Corp. John will be discussing the advantages of retrofitting existing equipment to make them autonomous, and how Brain is working to help during the global pandemic. I hope you enjoy our conversation. John, let me ask you a question. How can autonomous mobile robots work outside factories and warehouses?
Well, if you're familiar with the traditional AGVs in the industrial spaces, for 50 years, AGVs have been around in the controlled space in the warehouse. And some of the nice things about that controlled space is that you can tailor the space for the application. So in the example of, I'll say, traditional AGVs and the new modern AMRs, and moving from factory space to open public spaces, biggest difference there is just being able to control that environment. So traditional AGVs, anywhere from tape guide or wire guide or beacons, or even AMRs working in the industrial space, you get to control the environment in those industrial spaces. So you can put up, I'll say, the safety barricades, the safety delineation for people, working in and out with the robots, as well as you get to do training for anyone interacting with the machines. Whereas in the public space, and this is where everything we're kind of working on now for, say, AI-guided AMRs, it's a dynamic space with no controls. So you're working really in and around the public, and you're working in a pretty dynamic environment. And that's something that's really come about now, given, I'll say, the new modern sensors, compute that's now powerful enough and small enough and affordable enough, as well as sort of the modern AI algorithms when you get into machine learning and just the ability to handle a lot more data in a lot more sophisticated way.
You're talking about environments that are indoor, but maybe more commercial retail settings, or you're also talking about outdoor applications?
We're primarily focused on indoor right now. So one of the biggest areas that we're working on at the moment is in the retail spaces. So they're spaces that were designed for the customer, not for the equipment, right? And that's where you get a very dynamic interaction with the customers in that space and a collaborative robot. Outdoor is definitely possible. It's not an area of focus right now. It's primarily more of an application centric, needing a little bit different sensors or some different inputs for the outdoor space. But really, the application of navigating anything off highway is pretty similar.
Okay, I brought that up because one of the things that I've seen at SICK, my company, is that we have introduced some new products that are outdoor rated, where we never had some, for example, safety laser scanners having an outdoor rating. And that can really open up some additional opportunities or different kinds of applications that were never really considered in the past.
Yeah, if you think of a lot of the applications, they are pretty similar, indoor and outdoor, in that your general obstacle avoidance and your navigation, as far as the path planning and the running of an autonomous vehicle, is very similar between the two, as long as you're talking about off-highway applications. To your point, the sensors, traditional LiDAR, I'll say, gets washed out pretty easily with sunlight. That's an example where an outdoor specific LiDAR would be important. Outdoor, you also get to take advantage typically of like GPS or differential GPS systems, whereas indoor, you're primarily running in a GPS denied environment.
Now, the other thing that in just the last few years that I've seen is the integration of LiDAR technology with a vision-based technology, especially 3D vision-based technology, marrying the two, do a better job of determining the presence of objects and being able to incorporate the AI.
Yeah, that's actually one of the, I'll say, key designs that we leverage in order to run safely in public space. We use a full sensor fusion model with 2D sensors, 3D sensors, gyros, and encoders. So you're really building like a holistic integrated system in order to get that safety level necessary for these public space environments. So whereas in a controlled space, say an industrial space, you could get by with one or two safety LiDARs, and that covers your basic safety case in those controlled environments. In a public space environment, you need the richness of data from those 3D sensors and the 2D sensors in order to build that full sensor coverage to be safe in a public space. Specifically, if you think about, say, like children in a public space, you can't control their behavior. And so you really have to be able to sense everything very holistically in that environment and then be able to react quickly to that.
Yes, I can certainly understand that. Just had the pleasure in the last few days over the weekend of spending time with a nephew, very young nephew, very energetic. Boy, it would take some real thought to protect somebody like him. No question about it.
Well, it's interesting in the public space. There's a lot of acceptance now, but there's a lot of curiosity. So it's interesting that I think when people generally interact with a robot for the first time, a lot of the curiosity is really seeing, is this thing going to work, or is this thing going to be safe? Which really puts it in an interesting position where you have the public, I'll say, challenging the robots on a regular basis. So it's almost like you're in a test case 100% of the time.
I've seen that in factory automation applications, in warehousing applications. I can just imagine if you open it up to an uncontrolled environment as far as the personnel being there, how it would magnify all of those kinds of issues.
It really is something where you have to expect always the unexpected and be able to safely address it.
So your company is involved in retrofitting existing equipment also, isn't it?
Not retrofitting. I would describe it more as integration with OEM partners.
Okay.
So the difference just being is we're not putting a sort of a generic box on an existing machine. We're looking at equipment that's already out there today that's being built by some very proven OEM partners, and then integrating, I'll say, as least intrusively as possible into that current form factor. Two primary reasons for doing that. One, the reason that we work with the OEM brands is that there's a huge design knowledge and experience for that equipment. So typically these are companies that are partners that have 10, 20, 50, or 100 plus years of experience designing their product, and they have a very good quality, reliability, and design of those products. Integrating with that, you can leverage all of that. And in essence, being the automation house, we're not trying to, for example, design a floor scrubber from scratch or design a delivery vehicle from scratch. We get to leverage all of that history. And then the other piece of it is if you think about the adoption of automation in the public space, the machines that are the most comfortable are the machines that everybody uses today and they interact with today. So as step one, automating a piece of existing equipment is very familiar for both the operator and the public who interact with it. As you look to like generation 2 or 3 of that equipment with a proven partner, the design will become more automation centric to allow other functionality and features and other optimizations for that automation. But you're walking the path for adoption. Similar to like autonomous cars, the first autonomous car is still going to have a steering wheel, right? And it'll be dual use until at some point in the future, truly you can take away the steering wheel and you get all the functionality you need.
Understood. Different kinds of issues to think about when compared to the classic situation of designing a robot in a fixed space and designing something ground up, but now you open it up for more potential hazards and anticipation of what's happening. So in working with the integrators, I imagine you're learning quite a bit about really from their perspective on what they're thinking about and trying to help them with that.
We get a lot of design knowledge and understanding of the application itself with our partners. We also, all the equipment that we're working with partners on, it was all designed for a human operator. What's great about that is then you're also starting the autonomous functionality from that perspective. So what you end up with is a piece of equipment that's very user-friendly, that's dual purpose, for the sake that automation doesn't solve everything. There's still a lot of cases when an operator wants to just hop on the equipment and get a job done quick or get a special job done. But then when you get back to the tedious hour-long runs, that's when automation really can take over nicely.
Would you predict then we're going to see more collaborative type of autonomous equipment?
Yeah, absolutely. We're building automation to live to work in a world that was designed for people. And I think that's a really good thing. Right, is basically adapt the products, adapt the machines, adapt the automation to your world, not the other way around. Industrial automation is for that, right? That's where you're going into a building that's really designed ground up, for the efficiency of the automation. But it's not where you and I spend our time and live. Really being able to use automation that's comfortable within our space, I think, is really important. Just because it's a human-centric world, right? And it should be.
Okay, that makes an awful lot of sense. We're certainly affected these days by the global pandemic. How is your company, Brain Corp, helping to fight the global pandemic?
The biggest thing that we've seen is just with the utilization of the equipment. So really thinking about freeing hours up to handle a lot of these new tasks or these new challenges. I forget our metrics, I apologize. We've seen 25, 50+% utilization increases on machines during the pandemic. And what it is it's allowing customers to get a higher level of cleaning for the cleaning equipment, and then be able to take those operators that were doing that cleaning and really put them towards disinfecting tasks or other tasks, just the logistics around managing customers within the pandemic. If you think about spacing customers out, providing instruction to customers, there's a lot of hours tied up with that. And our automation is really helping to free up those hours.
Yes, I can certainly understand that even the utilization of robots, because they're not a living thing, would be less likely to transmit a disease of any kind, and creative ways of using automated equipment, mobile robots as they work is going to enhance abilities of people to be more productive.
Yeah, exactly. And also think of protocols around COVID right now. You have less density within an indoor space, for example, which means you have to have less employees working there, you have less customers within that space, but you're trying to do the same amount or more business in a lot of cases, like in a retail. How do you accomplish keeping the shelves stocked, doing more cleaning than you've ever done before, but now you're trying to do that with less and less people in the space in order to have the social distance, to create the environment that's safe for both customers and employees.
Now, in working with autonomous vehicles, mobile robots, are you working with, I know the term tugger. That's what many of AGVs that I began working with, that's what the real function was. They're basically just trains running around and dropping and delivering things. Is that concept still viable these days? Are autonomous delivery tugs still in existence and doing this type of thing?
Yeah, in fact, we just launched two really good OEM partners, Unit Carriers America, it's part of Mitsubishi Forklift, and Dane Technologies that do a lot of the retail equipment and automation. We just launched, in partnership with them, a auto delivery tug, which is pulling the standard stock cart tugs within the retail spaces. So I would say delivery is one of the biggest opportunities out there. Now we have a tech that can run safely within the public commercial space. It's bringing a lot of that delivery automation that was in the factory now into those commercial environments.
And this would, again, also have a potential for fighting the pandemic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's key from a standpoint of getting inventory stocked for the retail environment. So how do you help enable the brick and mortar retail to compete with the efficiencies of the online warehouses? So in essence, brick and mortar retail has the advantage of localized distribution, which is you have stores in all of your neighborhoods. So how do you move a lot of bulk product very quickly, especially when you're seeing a very quick transformation from traditional retail to e-commerce, which is you order online and pick in store, or you order online and you get it delivered. So automating that within the existing infrastructure of the local retail buildings is important from an efficiency standpoint to be able to compete with, I'll say, a dedicated, built-up e-commerce company.
If I go to the local gas station that has a store inside of it, and they seem to be getting bigger as time goes on, it amazes me that when you go in and you're looking for a particular item, it seems as if it's always there. There's not a dozen of them on the shelf, but what you need is there. And that has got to be a whole study in logistics and trying to maintain a supply and organization. Some of these companies have done a fantastic job of bringing things up to date, and it's all done with automatic identification technology, inventory control, and even getting into AI as far as anticipation of needs that are going to be happening.
Yeah, the supply chain logistics is really pretty incredible once you dig into it. If you think about most of the retail stores, there really no longer is a back warehouse to most of the stores, right? The value is within the floor space. So it's how do you guarantee that you have, say one or two of any product that anyone needs when they need it. And there's a lot more sophistication growing in the AI algorithms for just point of sale inventory. But then we're also seeing that augmented a lot by mobile robots for scanning inventory, for example. You can do some things with fixed cameras, you can do some things with AI on the point of sale data, and then you can augment that with a scanning apparatus on a mobile robot also within the space. One thing that we've seen is now the consolidation of these applications to where you're incorporating the scanning capability of a robot already running within a retail space, for example. So if you take a autonomous floor scrubber or an autonomous delivery tug, and now you combine that with some scanning capabilities, it's another really good data feed into the AI system for supply chain and inventory replenishment. So it really becomes retail 4.0.
Do you see, maybe it's just my perspective, but I see more communications between the retailer, and let's call him an end user, and integrators are people supplying these systems and trying to optimize for their particular needs a best type of an approach.
Yeah, I would say retailers are working on what is their platform, right? So how do they integrate all of this data and all this information into one holistic system? We're actually working significantly on from a standpoint of our focus is platform. So it's how do you get 2 or 3 automated pieces of equipment to really work together in harmony? How do you pull in the data from all of the analytics and help with the inventory and the replenishment? In essence, you're building out a platform for retail or a platform for automation so that you don't end up with this big dispersed system or divergent system where you have multiple robots running in the space that really don't talk to each other, right? Or you have multiple back-end systems that the integration task is really insurmountable.
At our company, we have a concept called 4D Pro, and one of the fundamental pillars of that is that our devices are able to or enabled to communicate with each other to integrate their own system, whether they're a vision-based product, a laser barcode scanner, some kind of LiDAR type of product, but the whole concept of integrating them together to speed up and act as a system is one of the pillars that we're trying to communicate. Even the fact that new technologies like IO Link enable our products to communicate their status, their performance, so that this can be looked at from a maintenance perspective, long-term, short-term, and anticipate needs for the future. And I would certainly assume that autonomous vehicles are looking to do more and more of that type of approach to their integrated systems.
Yeah, it's a very similar model for us from the AMR and the autonomous robot standpoint. Really, it's interconnectivity of those robots and then also the cloud component of that. So it's how do you tie all that back into one platform? And that's really where we put all of our focus is into platform, and that's one of the reasons why say we work with proven OEMs. It's why we work with proven sensor suppliers like SICK. It's staying focused on the platform is what allows you to go to the scale that you need, right? It is creating that one connectivity point between all of those different pieces.
Well, I certainly have enjoyed talking to you today, John, about these many aspects. Is there anything further you'd like to communicate? As long as we've got a good static, receptive audience listening to this, now's your opportunity.
Yeah. What I would say is I think automation it doesn't have to be scary anymore. So the biggest thing I've seen from I'll say what makes the time for automation now, or what makes it viable now, is how easy it is to get into it. So no longer are we looking at huge upfront infrastructure investments to get into automation. We're at a point where an individual application now stands by itself, and it's very easy to implement. So starting out with, for example, an autonomous floor scrubber, it's simply a better tool than the current manual floor scrubber you were using yesterday. But taking that first kind of very easy practical step with one piece of equipment, you can go down two paths. Is you can pick a piece of equipment that's very dedicated build and specific, or you can pick a similar piece of equipment that's on a platform. Right out of the gate, you might not notice the difference because both of those, say, autonomous pieces of equipment will do that specific job. Where you start to see the big benefit, though, is on a piece of equipment that's on a platform built specifically for that intent. The next step is going to be a lot easier. And the step after that is easier still. And pretty soon what you get to is that you've built out a very holistic system that's seamless. I'll say you can save yourself a lot of cost and effort and trouble in the future by sort of starting out with a vision of platform in mind, but take the first step with a very tangible, practical, simple application. Appreciate the time for you having me today. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I love your products. They work great as well. So I'll put a plug in there for SICK. We like to partner with strong partners and good components and good equipment.
Well, that's all for today's episode of On Air with SICK. Thanks for listening, and thank you to John Black for providing insights on retrofitting existing equipment to become autonomous, and how Brain is helping during the global pandemic. Join us again next time when we'll discuss trends in AMRs. If you ever want more information on anything we talk about in this podcast, send us an email at info@sick.com. Until next time, I'm Rolf Agner, and this has been On Air with SICK.